can't believe we've made it to the last session here. Oh my gosh, this weekend has been amazing, and I'm so happy for all of you who have kept in with me this weekend. And let's see here. I am very honored to add Steve, or AKA Steven Lome, to the spotlight with me. We are going to talk about a practical approach to passion, and I asked Steven to do this with me to kind of wrap up the weekend. We've gone everywhere this weekend. Like we've gone to how to leverage your creativity, how to set goals, how to be a leader, how to do social media, how to do copywriting, how to do blogging, all kinds of stuff. But I think that the truth is, I don't want to spin your wheel. I don't want you to spin spin your mind. I don't want you to put you in a wrong place. I think the idea is that it takes a lot of doing a little bit of time to understand where you want to go. And where you want to go is kind of what passion you want to bring. Where's your passion, and ultimately, how are you going to create a sustainable ecosystem, which is a catchphrase I like to use often for those of you who talk to me. Create a sustainable ecosystem for doing that, and that's why Steve and I are going to talk about a practical approach to passion. So, Steve, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so Steve is if I'm going to do your bio real quick. He's a former real estate developer and SCORE small business mentor. He's the author of the book, The $500 Cup of Coffee, which is a lifestyle approach to financial independence, and is a developer of a new app, Pay or Save, which is a shopping experience that makes saving money fun, right? So, how about that? So, Steve,
Scott.
we talk about starting businesses, right? We talk about um, leaning into what works best for you, right? Leaning into passion, but ultimately, what through people who you've mentored through SCORE and stuff like that. What are some practical advice you might give someone who's maybe looking at starting a business right now?
Well, the whole question I think of, do you follow your passion or do you follow the money? I think is a very interesting one. I think that this weekend has focused on creative types. I think most of the people who you featured today, who are entrepreneurs, definitely are following a passion. I think not everybody is blessed with a passion, or if they are, it may not be evident. I know it took me a little bit of time, I think, before I found one. And to tell you in all honesty, I'm not really sure that the passion that I identified is really the thing that makes me tick anyway. Um, so probably, I think probably the best place to start is being true to yourself. I mean, what is it that really makes you tick? And I think also, what is it that you want to accomplish by going into business or starting a business on your own? There are lots of different people. Nobody is the same. We have lots of different motivations. Some people truly do want to pursue a passion. Some people, I think those who tend sometimes to be a little bit more successful are those people who've actually identified a problem in their lives and have come up with a product solution, a service solution that's worked for them. It's something they figure that maybe other people can benefit from as well. Other people want to develop alternative streams of revenue. I think, right now we're all talking about multiple streams of revenue. Everybody wants to have a passive source of income. It's a big motivator, but it's not necessarily one that can get you, it's not necessarily a realistic aspiration, particularly for somebody who's in an early startup. Another reason people want to go into business is because they want to make a lot of money. And they think that, if they're working for somebody else, why can't they take the same time and talent and motivation and apply it toward making it for themselves? So I think there's all kinds of reasons that people actually want to go into business. I guess the real question is, if you do know what it is that you want to do, I guess the question that you have to ask yourself is, how can I get there from where I am starting today, step by step?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So we talk about opportunities a lot, and I think that this is a conversation that we had the other day. There's opportunities where people come, they start because they have a passion, right? And then there's opportunities that people actively research for to find. um, the best source of some opportunities that actually people want to pay money for. Let's just put it that way. And I think there's a hard balance there, especially with like creative entrepreneurs who are in like the information uh, content space. I think a great example is Sahara Rose, who we just talked to a couple hours ago, where she lucked out, where I think she found a space where people are willing to pay for it. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs similar to her who have something similar, maybe, that don't quite make it. So any thoughts on sort of mining for opportunities versus going leaning in to your passion?
Yeah, well, you're talking specifically right now about creative people who are generating content, but I think the question is actually a broader one. I think it really applies to almost anybody who's interested in going into business. Usually business starts with an idea, right? And usually it's an idea that people, let's use the word, are passionate about. At least it's something that they believe in. So I guess the big challenge, I think, for a lot of people who are just getting started is to actually understand or consider how their good idea is going to be received by somebody else. And I think for many people, there's a big block there. They understand it, they appreciate it, they see it, they understand it. They don't always take the time necessarily, though, to put themselves in their customer's shoes and to anticipate how something may be received. So I think that's probably a problem that a lot of people experience. The other big barrier, I guess, to starting your business, I guess, is just funding. How are you going to finance it? And actually, we had a couple people who actually talked about that today. Our first speaker today actually started slowly. He was working a full-time job, I believe it was in IT, and he basically started, I guess, a web design company on the side. I don't know really what his initial intentions were, but over the course of several years, he built it into something that he thought he could actually take full time. But that's not the only thing that he did. He did something else. And the other thing he did is he prepared himself financially. He paid down his debt. And not only did he pay down his debt, but he actually accumulated a year's worth of living expense. I don't know too many people actually who have done that. It obviously takes a lot of determination, but in addition to determination, it takes planning. So I don't know how many people really think that far in advance, and I don't know how many people actually have that capacity. That was very interesting. The other thing that was interesting too was, oh, what was her name? Oh, our keynote speaker this morning.
Aaron.
Was
Yep.
that Aaron?
Yep.
Now, Erin actually took a similar approach, except you can say it was much, much leaner. I mean, she started with $10,000. She says she had $5,000 set aside for living expenses and $5,000 set aside for her business. Now, that's not really a lot of startup capital, particularly if you're jumping off the deep end of the pool without a safety net.
Mm.
But Erin did have, Erin was her name, right? I
Yep.
believe she had some other assets, assets that may have been more valuable than money. And that was her work, her connections, and also the ability to actually take some of that and convert it into, I guess, her first client who actually was willing to pay her retainer. So I guess that's something that you really need to think about very seriously as well. How are you going to actually make that transition from working for somebody else to working for yourself in a way that makes sense? I think we all know that new businesses do take some time to start up. And actually, we had a couple of examples of that today. Our first speaker actually started very, very gradually. I think he's probably been at it now for probably for 5 or 6 years, full time for the past two. Erin somehow managed to scale her business very, very quickly within a very, very short amount of time, which, from my experience working with a lot of startups, is very atypical. But I think we can all agree that Erin probably is an atypical individual.
Yeah.
That's the reason you selected her as your keynote speaker today.
Yeah. She's very vivacious. I think is the word I'm looking for. But what was interesting is that they both had a little bit of a runway, right? And maybe her runway was a little shorter, but she made it happen, which I think is pretty amazing. So, but I guess too, it's also finding that intersection of like having an offering and finding the decision makers who want to pay for it too.
Well,
So
I think, Scott, that actually kind of gets back to, or gets down really to the basics. I mean, how do you really get started? I mean, you have an idea. How do you know that you're going to gain any traction with that idea? You like it, your mom likes it. Even if she doesn't, she's not going to tell you she doesn't like it, or maybe she
yeah,
will. But I mean, the real question is, how do you get, how do you get traction? How do you know that you're going to be able to get buy-in? So I think one of the things that we talk a lot about is MVP, which is most valuable player. You're the most valuable player on your team, but it also stands for minimal viable product. So the question is, what can you produce with the least expenditure of time, effort, and money that's going to put something out into the world that reflects what it is that you are offering and want to do, so that you could basically test concept, see if people are interested, see if it's something that they may be willing to buy, see if it's something they're willing to talk to you about, because whatever it is that you put out first is not going to be what you end up with. You know that you're going to have some tweaking along the way. So I think the real challenge, I think, for beginning entrepreneurs, and all of us are operating with a budget, all of us are operating with a budget, is how do you create that thing without overspending time, effort, or money? I think that's the real challenge. But I think what you need to do is you need to somehow prove that concept for a couple of reasons. One is so that it's worth the additional investment. The other reason is because there's a good chance you're not going to be able to do what it is that you want to do on your own. I mean, everyone who we've spoken to today has started off as an individual, but before too long, they surrounded themselves with a team. Now, that team could actually be somebody who they hire, as an employee. It could be somebody who they hire as a general contractor. It could be their accountant. But you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. You're going to need some help. Mm-hmm. So you need to create something that people are going to buy into.
Right. And I think sustainability goes back to having a team who can help you. And let's face it, running a business, there's a lot of moving parts, and sometimes you need 6 arms to do 6 different things at once, from accounting to marketing to all the stuff. So,
I think that's actually a good point that takes us back to this whole issue of passion, which is something that we started with. I mean, people who want to start a business, who are passion driven, want to do what it is that they love, right? Mm-hmm. That's the reason they're thinking about starting a business. But, as everybody knows who's been in business, that there are all the things that you just talked about. There's accounting, and there's payroll, and there's personnel, and most importantly, there's marketing, and there's sales, and then there's customer satisfaction. So you have all these things that are going on, and really all you want to do is sell your paintings or whatever it is that you want to do. Mm-hmm. So the thing that actually has motivated you to start the business may not actually be the thing that you end up spending a lot of time working on.
Right.
So I think that's something that you need to consider. The other thing I think that's important to consider is the thing that you love to do is the thing that you love to do. But when you convert it into your business, when it becomes your bread and butter, the relationship you have with it changes. So if it's something that people want and something that people are willing to buy, so much the better. But if it's something that doesn't translate into an easy business opportunity, or into something that you can easily sell, or something that you can't sell for what you think it's worth, then where are you?
Yeah.
Not only do you have an unsustainable business, but the thing that you loved is now a weight that's holding you back.
Right. So, and passions change for sure. I know. I'm maybe not as passionate about website stuff as I was when I first started, right? Just because you get tired of doing it, But yeah, that's
I think passions change, and this is something that I've been thinking a little bit about actually since you've invited me to talk. I've been reading a little bit of Scott Adams, who's the creator of Dilbert. And Dilbert, as most of you probably know, is the cartoon that kind of lampoons the corporate culture. And I think in some ways, Scott Adams and Scott, you are fellow travelers. I think you both talk about, the importance of failing forward, failing into your success. which I think is, something that most successful entrepreneurs do. I mean, the people who probably are the most successful, we know them for their successes, are probably also the ones who have failed the most because they're the ones who have tried the most. So I think that's something important to think about. But he also um, talks about goal setting, and I think that in a very interesting way. As a matter of fact, he says that goals are actually for losers. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, and I know it's actually contradicts some of the things that we talked about today about being, setting your goal, but not only setting your goal, being very specific, 10,000 steps, let's say, a day. Now, he's saying, let's forget about our goals. This, Scott, is in part reaction to what you said, you're changing passion. Let's forget about our goals, he says, and let's actually take a systems approach. So what does that mean? A goal would be a job, okay? A system would be continuously looking for new opportunity. A goal would be a six-figure salary. A system would be to continue to improve and use your skills. A goal would be to get married. A system would be to develop satisfying personal relationships. So he says, the problem with goal setting is this. Now, earlier today, we were talking about 10,000 steps. I'd like to use the example of maybe losing 20 pounds. So your goal is to lose 20 pounds. Maybe that's an easy thing for you to do. Maybe it's not an easy thing to do. So you're either going to succeed at losing 20 pounds or you're not, right? If you don't succeed at losing at 20 pounds, in spite of all of your efforts, you're going to feel like a failure. And you're going to be you're going to basically feel like a failure, and that you're going to be constantly disappointed with yourself. That's not real helpful. If you do succeed in losing 20 pounds, then what happens? Then you go out and celebrate, and you probably drink and eat a lot and put the weight back on. But aside from that, the thing that's kept you going for all of this time is no longer there. So what do? You have to replace it with another goal. So he's saying, rather than set the goal of losing 20 pounds, why don't we take a systems approach instead? If we take a systems approach instead, what are we doing? Well, we're probably looking at modifying our diet, and we can start with something simple, getting back to what we were talking about before, don't make it too hard, make it simple. Maybe just cut soda pop out of your diet. And then maybe you want to exercise a little bit more. It doesn't have to be anything big. Maybe it's a walk around the block. Maybe you walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. So what ends up happening, you end up developing a system, a pattern, a habit that's going to stick with you and is not going to result in that feeling of frustration. And then when you do succeed in reaching your goal of having lost 20 pounds, then what happens? You keep the weight off. So I guess what I'm saying is that, yeah, maybe the goal or the passion is website design. But maybe what you really like to do is you like to be involved in creating, let's say, tech solutions for people who are starting businesses. I guess, it goes back to, if you're in the business of transportation, horse and buggy. Are you in the business of transportation or not? If you're in the business of transportation, then from the horse and buggy, you create a car. If you're in the business of, being in the horse and buggy, then you're horse and buggy. But I think that's important to think, particularly today, because we live in such a dynamic world where things are changing so quickly. We're all working very hard, particularly the people here today, to network, to keep our skills current, I guess to find our passion, to express our authentic self. So maybe we don't need to be so goal focused. Maybe we need to think more in terms of systems. Maybe we need to think more in terms of the journey rather than the destination.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that an interesting thing that I think you could apply these systems to saving money, right, and accumulating, how you spend your time, but also how you spend your money too. So I think I'm trying to set you up a little bit for a little bit into the book, and then I know all the cool app you're working on. So So give us a little rundown on that.
Well, I think what Scott is referring to is the fact that I wrote a book a few years ago, and actually the reason it called the $500 cup of coffee, which, as he said, is a financial approach to financial. It's a lifestyle approach to financial independence, particularly for young people. And actually, I kind of wrote it as part of my rehab. I I was a real estate developer, as Scott had mentioned, and I was actually kind of caught with my pants down in 2008, 2009, when the bottom fell out of the housing market. I had two very large, very expensive speculative projects, which were going at the time. I had done all my research. I actually hit all the high notes. Projects like these are several years in development. So even though the market turns, you're really not in a position to, pull the plug. So I guess you need to ride it out. And rather than that $1 million profit that I was expecting, I had a $999,000 loss. It took me a few years actually to kind of regain my, to wind down the projects and regain my footing. But part of that was actually writing the book. I figured, well, do I know about money? I know about losing a lot of money. And I think, as we were saying earlier, we learn from our failures much more than we learn from our successes. So I actually, with my cousin, who knows a lot more about money than I do, or at least did at the time, decided to write this book actually to help others take a very, I think, common sense, straightforward, I guess, structured approach actually to wealth building. And just as importantly, to wealth, I guess, holding on to it. I mean, it's one thing to build it, but it's another thing to hold on to it. So that's pretty much what the $500 cup of coffee is. And the reference, of course, is that popular meme, if you buy your Starbucks every day, you're spending, Scott, in your case, $5,000 a year. But I mean, if you take that money and, you do something else with it, if you invest it, it will grow. I don't know if it's going to grow enough for you to be able to retire on, comfortably, but that's not really the point. The point is that what you're doing is you're establishing a pattern. If you establish that pattern when you're young, let's say you're 25 or 30 years old, if you're looking at another 30 to 40 years of compounding interest, it really will add up to something quite substantial. So I think the whole point here, I guess, is to develop, as we were just talking about, social media, requires a commitment. If you just do it on occasion, it's not going to add up to anything. It's the same thing over here. If you could somehow create the pattern, even if you start small, you'll be able to contribute more when you're able.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes, the $5 cup of coffee is obviously talking about spending habits, right? So what we spend every single day is something easily to let slip by. I know my wife and I like to do a lot of Amazon shopping and stuff like that because it makes it easy, and honestly, it's a little pleasurable when you buy something online, right? And it's like you click a button and you get that dopamine hit in your head, right? So I know it's still in the works, but how about giving us a little tease about what's going on in your world?
Well, that's why we're creating now the app called Pay or Save. I guess the intention behind the book was actually to provide people with the information, the inspiration for them to actually, build wealth, through savings. It has to start with savings. The app actually helps you save. It actually helps you save by doing exactly what Scott was just talking about, by shopping on Amazon. It allows you to shop right now on eBay and Amazon. We hope to add some more sites later. And the idea is that, when you go to shop, you can have an authentic online shopping experience and experience all those wonderful things that you enjoy when you shop. I mean, there's a relaxation, there's diversion, there's stress release. I mean, we shop for all kinds of reasons. Buying stuff is not the only reason we shop. It may not even be the primary reason we shop. If you already have 20 pair of shoes, need is not driving your next, shopping excursion, right? So this app actually gives you the opportunity to experience all those intangible benefits of shopping. And at the same time, it helps you save money. Actually, you can save a lot of money because when you go to check out, you have the option of pay, save, or invest. If you decide to pay, you go forward with your purchase as you would as usual. You pay your money and you get the merchandise. If you decide to save or invest, you're actually moving money from, one account, a checking account, into a savings or investment account where it's more likely to grow. And when you're less likely to, attack it for pizza and beer and, fabulous weekends out. So that's what the idea is. It's not quite ready. I'm hoping that it will be ready for release sometime, in the late first quarter, early second quarter. I think that's a realistic estimate of next year. Right now, we are asking people to go to our website so that they can sign up as a beta tester. If any of you think this could be interesting, you can go to payorsave.com. It's very simple. It's just payorsave.com. Press any blue button on the home page, and it will take you to a sign-up form. You sign up, and then you will be one of the very, very first people to have the opportunity to take this new app for a test drive. So,
Yeah, I'm excited to be a beta tester for you, Steve, and launch this app with you. So I think it's a good idea. I know for me, it's easy to. In fact, I mean, I managed to buy some stuff on Amazon while we were doing this Creative Year every weekend. It's hard to believe, but it'd be nice to have that visual cue at least every time when you see it, and really change our habits that are probably one of our most impactful habits that we have is shopping, right? So.
well, see, that's the thing behind it. We're talking about habits of four. This actually can convert the habit of shopping into the habit of savings. So the idea is that it doesn't do anything to change the shopping experience. It only changes your spending experience. And then there's one more feature that it has that's interesting. When you decide to save, it not only saves money, but it actually saves your item into a virtual closet so that at some point in the future, if you decide you absolutely need this item, you can't live without it, it will be there for you to purchase as well.
I like that idea. Cool. Well, so obviously, we talked about this morning, just to kind of recap a little bit, we talked about going, a practical approach to your passion, going all in, starting a business, whether it's a full-time business or a side business, you're probably going to need some capital, right? In order to do that, it's good to have a little bit of a runway, if you will, and having a little bit of a savings or at least a couple clients lined up. And I think the first thing that I might recommend, and Steve, please chime in, but having better saving habits and better at least grasp of how you expend your money that you do have is something that you can use to help determine what is your passion and your sort of short-term, long-term goals.
Well, I think that, a lot of people, when they come to SCORE, where I do my business counseling, do immediately ask about, setting up a business credit and all the rest. I think the thing that's important to understand, particularly if you're just getting started, is that there is no business, there is no revenue stream. It's really you. So there is, at that point, really no distinction, between your business finance and your personal finance. So, if your credit cards are overextended, that's going to make it more difficult for you to get started with your business. If you don't have, if you don't have any capital, if you don't have any savings, that's going to make it more difficult for you to get started with your business. It is interesting because sometimes people are just so motivated, by their idea that they're going to go down step 1, 2, and 3 before they finally get to the whole question of, money. And even though money is not really what we want to talk about or think about at first, particularly when we don't have easy access to it, that's really what business is, I guess, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, even people who say, well, I don't really need to make a lot of money. You still need to make enough money to be able to live on and support your business. So getting back to the point of sustainability, you need to make sure that you're making enough money to be able to, cover your overhead.
Yep. And I'm going to be a little selfish here too. And of course, a marketing strategy is a good way to help fuel your business, right? And that's what I talk a lot about in my book, The Digital Acquisition Cycle, in terms of how to build a sustainable marketing strategy that leverages both paid advertising and organic advertising through internet marketing. So I agree. I'm all about sustainability for that. So I do have a couple of questions here. Joan asked, will the app be available for Android?
Yes, there will be, Android and iOS.
All right, actually said what platforms will the app be available on the beta version?
That it will be available, I believe, on both platforms, and the two stores that we'll be able to shop on will be eBay and Amazon to start.
I think most people use those platforms, so that sounds good to me.
So eBay has already been coded and working. We're working on Amazon now.
Awesome, awesome. Tina said, "Way to go from bouncing back." To you, Steve.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot of money. Yep, it was.
But I want to say something about that. I said earlier that I found my passion. I'm not sure it was. I mean, real estate was the passion that I found. Actually, I've always known I've loved real estate. One of my first memories was driving by a school on the south side of Chicago with a tall chimney. And that chimney was one of my first memories. I've always wanted to be an architect and never was. And then all of a sudden, I guess in 2008, 2009, this thing that I had the fortune to be able to pursue was taken away from me, because of the economic downturn. And it did, as I said, it took me a little bit of time to kind of regain my footing and to kind of, refocus, to reinvent myself at a time in life when I didn't really think I would want to or have to. But I think what I've come to understand is that my passion isn't real estate as much as it is basically just being creative, being engaged, being involved, because I found all these things that, Scott has mentioned, writing a book, working on an app, consulting small business. Those things give me the same opportunity to engage creatively, to, use different parts of my brain, to be with people and to make a contribution. Again, I think that's why I'm going back to the system approach versus the goal approach, because I think my system is basically to remain engaged. And if I'm engaged, I can do it as a real estate developer. I can do it as an author. I can do it as a small business consultant.
Yeah, I love that concept. It's more like especially the stuff that you are passionate about. It's hard to put goals to that because you're going to spend as much time doing that as you want, right? In some ways, but aligning yourself and also like just having, one thing I tell a lot of people too, especially when it comes to like side hustling or having a side business, it's that sometimes your full time job covers your expenses, and then you literally have that opportunity, depending on the job that you have. And this doesn't work for every job, but then you have that opportunity to take whatever's left to focus on what you are passionate about and find what makes the most sense. So it doesn't work for everyone, but if you can, it's a great way to sort of test the waters before you really jump full all in.
I think that's a great point you're making. And the truth is, you might not have to jump in, all the way. I mean, maybe the best balance for a lot of people is, working your job. Hopefully it's something that you like, even if it's not something you're passionate about, but working your job, make your living, and pursue your passion on the side. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I think, that may be in some instances a better way of preserving that special relationship you have with it.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot of people I work with that are musicians that you wouldn't know, but half of them, like they work full time. I won't name them, but they work full time. One of the guys is a musician. He's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and he works full time with me. So like he's he's with the Shy Lights or whatever. So there's a lot of people who just make it work. And being a musician's a hard gig, but that's truly your passion. Then you can make it work, right? So you can still have a professional life too. So
I think one thing that's very important to remember is that, there's not one way, there's not one answer. I mean, for you, obviously we all have our different paths to take, but there's not one way, one answer for you. I mean, one thing that struck me today as I was listening to people is I have a feeling that the majority of people who end up speaking today are not doing today what it is that they started off doing, when they left college. I mean, life is a journey. It's going to take you to places that you don't necessarily, that you can't anticipate. So I think, again, the systems approach, I mean, keep open, keep your eyes and ears open. follow your interests, follow your passion, but follow your opportunities as well. Um, I guess the question is, do you follow your passion or do you follow your money? I mean, do you follow the money? One thing that Scott Adams said, which is actually kind of interesting, he was working as a commercial banker. He was saying that people actually, the best bet for the banker were not the people who were passionate. They were the people who were looking at the bottom line of a spreadsheet. Um, he says that people who are passionate, like some men who say they love their wives. When things start going bad, they leave. Um, when your passion is no longer sustaining you. So anyway, I guess his point was that, success leads to passion. I mean, if you're doing something that you're kind of like, if you're kind of suited for, that you're not very passionate about, as you become more experienced, as you have more success, as you're, let's say, achieving more recognition or making more money, there's a good chance that you're going to be feeling a lot better about it than when you were just starting or thinking about it. So just something else to think about.
And that's one thing we talked about. You can there's some of the better projects that I've had are the ones that I just wanted to do quickly and get out for the money. It's like set it up and then sell it kind of thing. Those they worked out pretty well. The ones that I'm very passionate about, they're not. I would never. There's no price tag to buy those, which is it's a slippery slope. So if it doesn't make money, no problem. It's my passion. But if it does make money, then that could be a. I'm not going to want to sell it. I'm not going to want to exit that project too. There's a talking about the practical approach to passion. I think what you brought up, Steve, is really important. You have to evaluate how attached are you to this particular project or not, because you're going to have to make some tough decisions at some point. So whether to kill it or whether to sell it or whether to double down on it. So because a business is not a hobby and a hobby's not a business. So yeah.
Well, I think that leads to another interesting point. I mean, when you do have an idea, when you want to start a business, I mean, make sure that, your monetization, is baked in to whatever it is that you're doing. And again, as I said, I'll talk to many, many people and they have this wonderful idea and, but even if, how are you going to make money at it? I guess that's something you really need to think about. And, in terms of developing the app, for instance, we built, when designing it, we built 4 revenue streams into the app. It's actually integral to the app. We didn't actually layer it, with different ways of making money afterwards. Well, as I said, it hasn't been proven yet, but hopefully it will work. So I think that's something important to think about too. I mean, from the very, very beginning, if you want to turn it into more, if you want to turn it into more than a hobby, if you really want it to be a business, you have to think very seriously from the very, beginning about, what is your money-making strategy?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow, this is a lot of good information. I'm really excited about your app, payersave.com, and looking forward to being one of your first users when it's available live. I've read your book and I gave it a 5-star review, so I highly recommend it for anyone who would like to read it. I have a 5-star review on Goodreads. I don't know if you saw that or not, but check out the $500 cup of coffee right here. It's a cool little book cover, and basically, Steve, thank you.
Well,
and at this point, I'd like to thank all of you for being part of the inaugural Creative Year Ever virtual summit. This has been a whirlwind of a weekend for me. I feel like I'm like Brett Doherty with that giant beard. I feel like I've been at my computer all weekend. I should have listened to the advice of some of my advisors and maybe not do so many sessions. Heather, I'm talking about you. but ultimately, it's been fun, and every session had a great nugget of information. So if anything, I'm super happy to capture this information and make it available to the VIPs who are part of this event. So I'm going to open up the floor one more time. And if anyone wants to hop on, say anything, tell us what you're working on. We'll kind of do a mini networking session. But I'm about ready to log off. I don't know about you guys. So that's that. I'll give you a few minutes, and we'll go from there.
I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining. All
God, it's
right.
Fred. I'm gonna say hey, thanks a ton. You guys have inspired me to get back going again, and really, 2021 is going to be a big year. So thank you very much. You got me got the passions and everything brewing. So I like it.
All right. My goal is to help everyone celebrate when you think of New Year, think of Creative New Year, right? CYE. So thank you, Brett. I look forward to connecting with you in a couple weeks too. Let me know. Okay. And yeah, thank you, Joan. Thank you, Jessica, for helping us this weekend. I appreciate that. And Tina, thank you. You have been my most loyal watcher this weekend, I think, along with Robert, both Roberts. And I really appreciate that. That gave me the spark to keep going, even when I wanted to give up. So thank you. And yeah, hey, look, everyone, have a wonderful New Year. Enjoy the rest of your first weekend of the year, whatever's left of it, a couple hours, anyways. And stay tuned to creativeyearever.com. You're going to be getting some emails from me with the VIP information for catching the recordings. I needed to do some video editing, so give me some time to do that. And then I will have some follow-up. Be sure to check out contentacademy.com. Our next virtual event will probably be centered around content creation, social media, that kind of stuff. Lauren, if you're still on, I'm probably going to be calling you again. Not going to lie, but
yes, I'd love it.
Awesome. Yeah, so and also I'm ramping up my podcasting efforts again. I see Gail. Gail's on. Don't forget growingolderwithgusto.com. Check out our podcast and YouTube channel related to Growing Older with Gusto. My podcast, I plan to restart. I keep saying this, but I'm legit about it. I'm going to use a system, not a process, Steve, to get my podcast together. Blogyouwant.com, which I really talk about the content you want. What's the content you want for your website, your social, whatever you want. We cover a depth and breadth of all kinds of what it is to be a content creator, kind of like everything we talked about this weekend. So from creativity all the way down to the brass tacks of posting and optimizing your site, your content, and all that stuff. And then also don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ actually it doesn't have a slash. You just go on YouTube and search for Content Academy. Please subscribe and like to that channel. That's where I'm posting a lot of my great video content. And I'm excited to launch the Digital Acquisition Cycle course that's coming out really soon. If you check out my book on Amazon, for those who didn't win this weekend, if you check out my book on Amazon, it's a digital acquisition cycle for content creators. So you can go on Amazon and just search for it, or go to blogyouwant.com/DAC. You can check out the book. I've got my complete marketing strategy for how to build a sustainable ecosystem around marketing yourself online. And ultimately, I'm going to be launching a course that goes along with it. So the course will come out in the next couple weeks. I'm dead. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful new year. Stay tuned. Rock on, everyone.
Great job, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.